The text message arrived at 3:17 p.m. on a Monday, a quiet ping that sliced through my day like a blade. It was a hotel confirmation. A reservation my husband had never mentioned, one-room ocean view king bed champagne package. The sender was his executive assistant, Olivia Bennett, the woman who smiled at me in board meetings, fetched coffee with perfect politeness, and wrote notes on her tablet while sneaking glances at Thomas. I stared at my phone, my fingers trembling, the glow of the screen burning into my chest. Check-in Friday, check-out Sunday. The Monte Vista Resort, one of the most exclusive coastal getaways in the country. It wasn't by accident that I saw it. Something inside me had been screaming for weeks, whispering truths I didn't want to name. Late nights, password-protected calls. His sudden interest in cologne I hadn't bought. 16 years of marriage had taught me to read the small fractures. Now the fracture had become a canyon. "Miranda, we need you in the conference room." My assistant's voice tugged me back into the present. I tucked the phone into my palm, breathed deep, and smoothed the silk of my blouse. I had always been the steady one, Miranda Coleman, co-founder strategist, the woman who never cracked under pressure. When I walked into the room, Thomas was already there, salt and pepper hair shining under the fluorescent light, his tie loosened just enough to project charm without fatigue, and beside him sat Olivia. She didn't look at me, not directly, but I caught the flick of her eyes toward him, a look I knew too well now. Admiration, possession, a secret just beneath the surface. I slid into my chair with practiced grace. "Sorry I'm late," I said. Calls ran long. Thomas nodded, but his gaze dodged mine. I knew then in my bones that the weekend he'd mentioned, the business trip to Denver, wasn't about clients or contracts. It was about her, about them. That night, I asked casually while pouring him a glass of Cabernet. "So which client are you meeting in Denver?" "The Reynolds Group," he answered smoothly without missing a beat. Lies had become his second language. I smiled faintly, my throat burning as I lifted the glass. "Sounds important. Good luck." Later, when he fell asleep, I lay awake, my body rigid beside his. 16 years. 3 miscarriages, building a company from nothing in our garage into a multi-million-dollar firm. All the nights I'd stood behind him, holding him up when the weight was too much. And still here he was, slipping into another woman's bed, while mine grew cold. The next morning, I watched from the window as he loaded his golf clubs into the trunk for a business trip to meet clients who didn't golf. My chest cracked open, but instead of tears, a cold steel determination filled the space. I picked up my phone and dialed HR. "Janet, it's Miranda. I need Olivia Bennett's personnel file immediately." Within 20 minutes, I knew her emergency contact, Ryan Winters, her fiancé. The man who sat 2 rows down from her, a brilliant senior data analyst whose desk was littered with photos of hiking trips, dinners, and a future he thought was secure. Poor Ryan. Did he know? By Friday morning, my plan was forged. I packed deliberately power suits, my favorite crimson dress, lipstick, the color of blood. I checked into the Monte Vista, 1 floor above their room. From my balcony, I watched Thomas help Olivia from the car, his hand grazing the small of her back like it belonged there. Her laughter rose into the sea breeze, sharp as broken glass in my ears. I photographed everything. His arm around her waist in the elevator, their dinner at the Michelin-starred restaurant, the wine he ordered, the very bottle he used to save for our anniversaries. My phone buzzed with his text. "Meetings going well. Working late with the team. Miss you." I typed back, "Everything's exactly as it should be," but inside a storm raged. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a life lived in parallel, funded by company cards, covered by false expenses, shielded by lies. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was cheating on everything we had built together. And then I saw it, a Tiffany's receipt tucked neatly into the credit card portal, an engagement ring. My husband wasn't just betraying me, he was preparing to replace me. I thought of the night I miscarried last year, alone in a sterile hospital bed, clutching my phone, waiting for Thomas's voice while he claimed a snowstorm had grounded him in Chicago. Who held him that night? Who whispered comfort into his ear while I bled in silence? By Saturday morning, Ryan had arrived, suitcase in hand, ready for the client meeting I had lured him into. His eyes lit with excitement until I told him the truth. that Olivia wasn't in San Diego with her sister. She was in room 412, with my husband. I watched disbelief crush him, watched his face crumble and his fists clench. There must be some mistake, he whispered. I thought the same about Thomas, I said quietly. I was wrong. He leaned against the wall, ashen. I need to see for myself, and I promised him he would. We waited until evening, the air heavy with the scent of salt and jasmine drifting from the hotel gardens. Ryan sat beside me in the lounge, his knee bouncing his knuckles white against the glass of untouched whiskey. I recognized the look on his face, the stunned disbelief of a person whose world had just split down the middle. I had lived in that expression for days. Now I watched it carve him open. They're in the restaurant now, I whispered, my phone in my hand, showing him the live feed from the hotel's social media, which had tagged a photo of Thomas and Olivia smiling at their table, oblivious to the world around them. Ryan's jaw tightened. I bought her that dress, he muttered. His voice broke, then hardened. She said it was for our engagement party. My stomach twisted, but I pressed forward. Come with me, it's time. We walked into the restaurant like strangers, yet bound by the same wound. The clink of cutlery and low hum of conversation filled the air. I spotted them instantly, Thomas leaning in too close, Olivia's laughter spilling out like cheap perfume. The Tiffany ring box sat brazenly between them on the white linen tablecloth. I signaled to the maitre d' I had discreetly tipped earlier. He nodded, placing us at a table close enough for their faces to be visible, but far enough not to draw immediate attention. Ryan's breathing grew shallow. Mine burned in my chest. When the waiter brought their next course, I slipped a folded note onto his tray. Deliver this to Mr. Coleman, I instructed softly. He raised an eyebrow but complied. I held my breath as Thomas reached for the paper, confusion flickering across his face. He unfolded it, and his skin drained of color. Enjoy your meal. Your lies are as cheap as the wine you once saved for me. He froze, fork suspended in midair, Olivia glancing between us with growing panic. Ryan's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. The entire restaurant hushed. Tell me! Olivia, Ryan's voice rang out, trembling with rage. How does that ring look under the lights tonight? Did you tell him it was supposed to be mine? Gasps erupted around the room. Olivia's face flushed, crimson tears springing to her eyes. Ryan, please, it's not. Thomas stammered. Miranda, I can explain. But I rose to my feet, calm as steel. No more explanations, Thomas. 16 years and this is what you've built. Lies stacked on lies. The manager appeared flustered, but the damage was done. Every eye in that room bore witness. Every whisper would become a wildfire. I walked out, my heels striking marble like a gavel, Ryan beside me, his breath ragged but resolute. Outside, the ocean roared in the distance as if the world itself had delivered judgment. Ryan turned to me, his voice low, raw. What now? I looked at him, at the man who had been collateral damage in the same betrayal. Now, I said, we make sure they can never rewrite this story. And in that moment, I knew revenge wasn't about shouting or fists or chaos. It was about clarity, about truth dragged into the light so brightly it burned the lies to ash. The night bled into morning, but sleep never touched me. I sat on the balcony of my suite, staring at the ocean as it clawed against the rocks below. Every crash of the waves sounded like a reckoning, like the truth refusing to stay buried. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from Thomas, messages dripping with desperation. Miranda, please, let me explain. It's not what it looked like. I love you. Don't do this. Lies lined up like soldiers he thought could still defend him. At dawn, Ryan knocked on my door. His face was pale, eyes hollow, but behind them burned a kind of fury I recognized. He's still in the room with her, he said. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't stopped repeating the fact all night. Good, I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. Let him stew in it. Let her see what a coward looks like when the mask falls. Ryan sat opposite me, head in his hands. I was going to marry her, he whispered. Next spring. My mom already started making the guest list. He let out a bitter laugh that turned into something closer to a sob. I felt a pang of something deeper than sympathy. It was solidarity. 2 lives detonated by the same explosion. 2 futures rewritten without our consent. You didn't deserve this, I told him quietly. Neither of us did. By afternoon, the hotel corridors buzzed with gossip. Guests who had witnessed the scene in the restaurant whispered as I walked past. A chambermaid offered me a sympathetic glance, as if she too had pieced together the story. Shame might have crushed another woman. For me, it was fuel. Every whisper was another nail in the coffin of the carefully constructed image Thomas had worn like armor. At 5 p.m., I requested a meeting in the hotel's executive lounge. The manager owed me a favor I had invested in one of his family's ventures years ago. I need a private room, I told him. 2 seats, 2 surprises. He arranged it without question. At 7 p.m., Thomas arrived first wearing the same navy suit he'd worn on countless client dinners, the one I used to iron for him before every trip. His tie was askew, his eyes bloodshot. "Miranda," he started reaching for me, but I pulled back. "Sit," I said. He obeyed for once. Minutes later, Olivia entered. She froze when she saw Ryan behind me, his gaze like fire. Her hand went to her throat, where the Tiffany necklace glinted accusingly. "What is this?" Thomas demanded, his mask of authority slipping. "This," I said, my voice calm, deliberate, "is truth. The 4 of us. No lies, no shadows. Just the consequences you've both been running from." Ryan stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. "You told me we were building a life, Olivia. You promised me forever while you crawled into his bed." Her lip quivered, tears spilling, but Ryan didn't stop. "Do you know what it feels like to find out you're not even second choice, you're just a cover story?" Thomas bristled, his arrogance bubbling through the cracks. "Miranda, this isn't necessary. We can resolve this privately." I let out a bitter laugh. "Privately, you stole 16 years from me in secret, and now you want privacy?" "No, Thomas. This is where the curtain drops." The silence that followed was unbearable. Olivia's sobs, Ryan's ragged breathing, Thomas's fists clenching uselessly against the table. It was a symphony of ruin. I stood smoothing my crimson dress, every inch of me steady, though my heart thundered. "You chose this hotel to celebrate your lies. I chose it to bury them. Whatever happens next, Thomas, you will never again own the narrative. I will." Ryan met my eyes, and in that moment we weren't victims anymore. We were survivors standing at the edge of something new, something scorched but ours. Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came, only the sound of a man drowning in the silence he once weaponized against me. For years he had turned quiet into control, withholding truths until I begged to fill the gaps. Now it was his turn to choke on absence. Olivia finally spoke, her voice breaking. "Ryan, I never meant—" He cut her off, his tone so sharp it made even me flinch. "Don't you dare say you didn't mean to. You meant every dinner, every lie, every night you looked me in the eye and called me yours." His fists shook, but his voice held. "You don't get to rewrite this as an accident." Her tears streaked the flawless makeup she'd painted for their weekend. For a brief, fleeting moment, I almost pitied her. Then I remembered the Tiffany's receipt, the way she had laughed at my husband's jokes while I sat at home believing in a life they were dismantling piece by piece. Pity was wasted here. Thomas shifted in his chair, leaning toward me with the same false tenderness he had perfected years ago. "Miranda, listen to me." "No," I snapped, the word ringing like glass shattering. "You will listen to me. 16 years I gave you. 16 years of sacrifices, of carrying the weight you dropped whenever it suited you. And this is where it ends. Right here in front of her, in front of him, in front of anyone who needs to see what a coward looks like when the lies collapse." For once, Thomas didn't argue. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit, but none appeared. His empire of secrecy had collapsed into 4 walls and 3 witnesses. Ryan straightened, pulling a small black box from his pocket. He slammed it onto the table in front of Olivia. The ring rattled as the lid popped open. "This was supposed to be your forever," he said, voice raw. "But forever doesn't survive betrayal. You can keep the necklace he bought you. This ring goes back to the jeweler." Olivia sobbed, reaching out, but Ryan turned away. I gathered the papers from my bag. Hotel receipts, photographs, copies of expense reports Thomas had signed. I spread them on the table like a dealer laying down cards. "This isn't just infidelity, Thomas. This is fraud. Every bottle of wine, every room, every gift, you charged it to the company we built together. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our legacy, our employees, every person who trusted you." His face crumpled. He knew what that meant: board members, lawyers, auditors. His downfall wouldn't just be personal, it would be professional, public, permanent. I leaned close, my voice low and steady. You wanted a weekend getaway. Instead, you booked yourself into the end of everything. The silence that followed was thicker than any argument. Olivia stared at the table, tears dripping onto the papers. Ryan stood, his breathing ragged but resolute, then looked at me. Thank you, he whispered, for not letting me live in the dark. He left the echo of his footsteps heavy with finality. Olivia remained broken and shaking beside Thomas, who now looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, shriveled, diminished, stripped of every illusion. I gathered my things, my heels clicking against the floor as I walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned back once. I loved you once, Thomas, more than you deserved, but tonight I finally love myself more. And then I walked out, leaving him with his mistress, his ruin, and the wreckage of his lies. Back in my suite, I stepped onto the balcony, the ocean wind tangling my hair. The stars glittered above, vast and untouchable. For the first time in years, I felt the space inside me expand, not from loss, but from freedom. Betrayal had burned my life to the ground. But in the ashes, I saw something Thomas could never take from me: the chance to rise again. The morning after felt strangely calm, like the hush that lingers after a storm has torn through. I woke early, the sun spilling across the hotel sheets, and for the first time in years, I didn't reach for Thomas's side of the bed. That space was empty, but instead of aching, it felt like oxygen, like possibility. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with the hum of travelers. Some of them glanced my way, whispers still circling from last night's scene in the restaurant. I didn't shrink from it. Let them talk. Let the story spread. I wanted the world to see Thomas not as the charismatic executive, not as the loyal husband, but as the man who had gambled love, integrity, and legacy for a fling in a hotel room. When I checked out, the concierge handed me an envelope. Delivered for you, Mrs. Coleman. My chest tightened at the name, but I opened it anyway. Inside was a single line written in Thomas's unmistakable handwriting. Please meet me one last time. No lies, no defenses, just me. I almost tore it up. Almost. But curiosity, maybe closure, led me to the small cafe across from the resort where he said he'd be. He was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His eyes lifted when I walked in, and for a flicker of a moment I saw the man I had once fallen in love with. But that flicker was gone as quickly as it came, smothered by the weight of everything he had destroyed. I don't know where to start, he said, voice low, raw. Try the truth, I replied, sitting across from him. He nodded, swallowing hard. It started a year ago. At first, I told myself it was harmless, late nights, dinners. I convinced myself I still loved you, that this didn't change anything. But it did. And instead of stopping, I leaned in. Because she looked at me like I was invincible Miranda. I felt powerful again. I closed my eyes briefly, the honesty stinging worse than the lies. And what did I make you feel like, Thomas? He flinched, like a man who could never measure up to you. You're stronger, smarter. You built everything while I drifted. The words hung heavy between us. It wasn't love he chased, it was escape. Escape from the weight of my loyalty, my sacrifices, my strength. I don't expect forgiveness, he whispered. I need you to know that you were never the problem. I was. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. I already knew that, Thomas. What I needed was for you to know it too. For the first time in 16 years, his composure cracked completely. Tears slid down his face, unguarded, unperformed. And strangely, I felt no triumph, just a quiet finality. I stood, gathering my purse. This is the last time you'll ever see me like this, face to face, giving you my time, my heart, my presence. From now on, whatever comes will be handled through lawyers. He nodded, broken. Goodbye, Miranda. Goodbye, I echoed, walking away, and I meant it. Back in my own city, life didn't heal overnight. But it began. I signed the divorce papers with hands that didn't shake. I reclaimed the office he had once dominated. Employees who had feared his charm now looked to me for steadiness, and I gave it freely. Ryan visited once, months later, to tell me he'd transferred departments, focusing on rebuilding himself. You saved me from a life I never would have escaped, he said quietly. As for me, I filled my apartment with light. I started painting again, splashing color on canvas in ways that reflected the chaos and the clarity. Each brushstroke reminded me that creation is the antidote to betrayal. And sometimes late at night, I reread my grandmother's old words, "Build the bridge, don't drown in the river." I understood them now more than ever. Because betrayal may have shattered me, but I was the one who chose to rise plank by plank into a life rebuilt by my own hands. If my story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt broken by betrayal, but longed to find your way back to strength, I ask you to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, subscribe for more stories of truth and healing, and leave a comment to tell me your journey. Because sometimes the stories we share are the bridges we build for one another.